Okay, well, good evening, everybody. My name is Andy Higgs, and I'm the General Manager of Ventures and Partnerships here at Centrality. We are creating a decentralised future, and I guess what that means is we're creating an interconnected marketplace of applications that can exist with no gatekeeper. So we're building the infrastructure, the libraries, the SDKs that you can build your applications on, and it's really exciting. I mean, everyone's talking blockchain these days, and that's because there is literally a use case in every industry. But that all starts with identity. So tonight we're going to focus the topic on identity, and really more when we're talking identity, it's broadly defined as the identity of individuals, businesses, and physical objects. But we're going to focus on the user tonight. So I hope everyone was expecting that as a subject. It's very clear today that the virtual you isn't owned by you. When they designed the internet, they left out the protocols around identity. So the private sector stepped in and developed these big data-driven business models, which mean that really where we've ended up is the internet hasn't delivered on its promise, and there's a really asynchronous relationship between the user and these big data platforms, most of whom are in Silicon Valley. We can all name them, and it makes it really hard. So when we set up this company, actually, the challenge was, how are we going to take on Silicon Valley from New Zealand? And we thought, we've got to change the business model, which is that case for decentralization. And really it starts with, who owns the data? We like to say, with Google, you're the product. With Microsoft, you're the customer. And with blockchain, you're the owner. So you've got a real stake in the future. So it's a key part. So this is our identity project that we have been working on with KiwiBank and Datacom as part of the KiwiBank FinTech Accelerator. And really, there's so many people around the world working on identity projects, and we're saying, well, we've got to approach this differently. There's lots of good identity products out there, but if you haven't solved the chicken and egg problem, how do you create a marketplace? What's in it for the user? We've all probably downloaded an identity application, but there's nowhere to use it. So we figured out, let's talk to the guys that built Realme, figure out where they went wrong, and then look at trying to create something better. So how much is your identity worth? Well, it's evidently worth quite a lot. It's worth trillions, and if you have, you can't actually access internet services without a profile. So there'd be no Gmail, there'd be no iTunes, there'd be no Uber without this. But I don't know how many profiles you've got. I've probably got 40 or 50, and it's pretty tricky remembering all those passwords, right? Unless you're smart enough to use one of the apps, but then they change them. So yeah, it's it's a complicated picture. It's clearly worth a lot, and if you look at the data breaches, this is the downside. It's not just about creating great experience. It's about what happens when things go wrong. And there's been a number of high-profile data breaches in the last 5 years, and you don't have to look far to see them. And it's become really topical. We kind of like this photo of old Zuck. It's a bit unfair, but he was put through the ringer recently for good reason. The Cambridge Analytica situation wasn't good. It wasn't a good look for anyone. And look what we've ended up. And we think the situation that's unfolding right now in the US is exactly the sort of environment that's needed for this new world, this new technology to take over. So in some ways the timing's quite fortuitous. And it did affect people here. So 68,000 New Zealanders had their full Facebook profiles sold to Cambridge Analytica. So AML's the big hot topic. The new AML Phase 2 legislation's kicking in July 1, and everyone's going to have to go back to the drawing board, and real estate agents, lawyers, accountants, a much broader pool of professionals, and are going to have to sign up to much more rigorous controls around anti-money laundering protection under the AML Act. And so it's not really, I mean, you could opt out and go and live off grid, but if you want to consume any service in society, this is going to be a reality for all of us. So again, with GDPR happening in Europe, everyone's asking what's going to happen to privacy here. This legislation change, identity's become pretty important. So when we're looking around, there's we mentioned before, there's a lot of different profiles with different attributes. You've got your, banking's quite a high bar because, if you're consuming banking services, especially things like mortgages, insurance, there's a lot of process where you've got to prove yourself, passport and utility bills and credit ratings and other things. You've got your post office, your JP, witness protection, and you've got to carry all these things around in the physical world, but it's not quite mirrored in the digital world. The government came up with a solution. We presented this the other day in front of a whole lot of bankers and fintech people and DIA people. This slide, we didn't think it was funny, and it's clearly not that funny, but the whole room laughed out loud because RealMe, nice idea, but it's sort of centralized idea, and again, what's the use case? Unless you're a company director and you need one for your for your company's office access, or you're a BNZ customer and you can use RealMe to register for services without going into a bank, then it's not terribly useful. And now you've got 4.5 million Kiwis, roughly, population, and only 400,000 of them have signed up for RealMe, and that's despite tens of millions of dollars going into it. For us, I just wanted to sort of drop the blockchain piece in here. So how do we get from this situation where you're carrying around all these different profiles to the new world? I mean, most of you, I think, from talking to you before the meeting, understand a bit about blockchain, but it's really difficult to scale trust from the physical world to the digital world without a different model, which is this distributed ledger technology where you have a community responsible for maintaining the integrity of the database. Plus, you've got the technology where you can encrypt this very versatile spreadsheet technology. And if you download the source code, run a node, anyone can be responsible for helping maintain that consensus in the network in terms of when transactions go through, confirming the accuracy of the transaction. So you're not relying on one gatekeeper or source, one government, one bank, one corporate entity to do that. So, in terms of the permissioning, there's a lot of opportunity around this technology, and using third parties to prove who you are in various different situations has been the traditional way. But with blockchain, you don't have to trust anyone. You just trust the system. And if you want to see whether the system works, I know a lot of Bitcoin have been lost, but the actual integrity of the Bitcoin has never been broken, and that's why it's survived the last 9 years and continues to survive, because you can trust the system. The code is law, and no one so far has managed to crack it. So when we introduced this idea, the model we came up with let's come up with it was called a trust framework, using blockchain, but let's figure out a way where you can actually share your existing identity profiles. So they call it attestation sharing or verification of who you are. So rather than when you're about to consume a service, and it's like a journey, so you have the lower value use cases, like might be getting a driver's license is kind of where you kind of start out in this kind of mobile identity world. And then the next thing you might use that for is, when you turn 18, you want to go to the liquor store, you have to show your driver's license. And in that case, you're not actually handing anything over. It's just showing them your driver's license. They're proving you're over 18, and you can do the same in the digital world with the blockchain. And then you go up to higher value use cases. So a bank, you want to take a mortgage. You're asking for more attributes to get that. They need to know your credit history, your income, other things. And then where this could end up on this identity journey is voting. So it could transform democracy, and really this model where you can share these attestations from from different parties in a trustless way on blockchain is really the foundation. And this model where there's kind of an umbrella identity marketplace where you choose which form of identity is necessary for what use case has been endorsed by the World Economic Forum. So they're saying this is the future, you know. So don't try and build something new, just use what you've got is essentially the message there. So how does this work in the real world? We're not officially affiliated with TradeMe yet, but they let us use their, because it's so ubiquitous for Kiwis, how this would work in their model. If you're someone who hasn't registered with TradeMe, you would be able to use your bank ID to provide the information they need, such as your delivery address, and it would be provided through an identity wallet, and that statement, that proof of where you live, would be verified on the distributed ledger technology. So it all happens in real time, and it's quite of a simple depiction of how that works. But yeah, I guess that's what we're signing up to, and what we see is, you know, how versatile could this be in your everyday life, from your file sharing online to your gaming. Particularly important in gaming, where there's huge prize money. You need to be sure that you're not gaming the system and getting someone to play for you just to win the prize money. Accounting, obviously, car sharing, bike sharing, real estate, renting property is a really good one. We see the whole tenancy market is a really good one. You think about every time you move a house and all the admin that goes with that, all the utility bills you need to get swapped over, and all the week or 2 weeks of nightmare when you sort of move house could be all resolved via this way. And there's added other features in blockchain which make it more attractive, like everyone's probably heard of smart contracts, where you can automate a lot of the processes around the back end. Healthcare is a big one. Once the user is in control of their own data and information, you kind of solve the liability question, because the people that hold the data right now in the medical industry are worried if they give it to the wrong person, what could happen. So there's big issues around liability, travel, of course, and and banking, financial services. So what we did as part of this project, halfway through, we figured out that we weren't going to get very far with just the 3 companies, and we with the DIA, we opened this up, and we managed to get a country like New Zealand, small country, 1-2 degrees of separation. We managed to get all the banks in the same room, and a few large technology companies, TradeMe, a few Payments New Zealand, and important New Zealand customers, and they figured out that this was a good track to go on, and if we all work together, we could create this new form of data where the user controls their own data. It's called self-sovereign identity, which we'll hear a little bit more about shortly from Guyan, how that works in blockchain. And then, it's this foundation for a digital nation, where a whole lot of new industries and business models could be spurned once you crack this problem. And the identity trust framework is really the kind of part of the protocol layer, which will encourage it's the standards around storage, around attributes, around attestation sharing, which enables the whole marketplace to work. So and the concern, I guess, for Kiwis when you start having this conversation is, how do we know it's not going to end up in a worse state? So you've got to have the governance and control around it. So the government's obviously concerned if they don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so they've got to create this duty of care around what's happening with the data, and that this new technology, which they're still coming up to speed on, is going to work. But really, we've sort of said we're going to be a bit more open about how we talk about this, and it's really hard to get groups to agree, but we said we've got to make progress. So let's talk about it, and let's be a little less cautious than we otherwise would be. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. And and the government's been quite good. They haven't actually formed an official view yet, but they've said, sure, go out there and talk about it and start the conversation, so we can start getting feedback. And it's amazing how many different entities are now approaching this digital identity forum to be a part of this story, because they can see the benefits. So some of the principles, that's the agility one. We want to move fast. Obviously there's a lot happening in this space, so we're trying to look around the world to what's best practice, and the principles. We say America's all about freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of expression. New Zealand, I think what we all agreed was Kiwis are all about fairness. So, how do we encourage a more fairer value exchange? How do we enable the smaller businesses, the guy who's got the app idea, to go out there and be successful? And it's not, it's easy to talk about, it's a complicated picture, but there's a lot of work going on behind the scene on multiple work streams, on multiple verticals to figure out all the steps in the process, to just give people their control of their data back. So the message is decentralisation creates the fairer world for everyone. In order to make it useful for everyday people, we've identified three big areas. One is around fintech. So the Kiwibank Fintech Accelerator has got 6 or 7 really interesting applications across home ownership, insurance, giving money to charity during the payment process, the choice example, and we want to get them all into this world. And then GovTech, government technology, there's the whole opportunity around entitlements in the sort of Department of Social welfare space. People aren't receiving all the entitlements they're entitled to, so there's a real social impact opportunity there. And then of course with centrality, we're building this infrastructure to enable this decentralized world. So really it's the world you use now with centralized app, with ordering food through your mobile phone, ride sharing, travel apps, but changing the business model behind it and giving more value to the business operator, to the driver, to the staff member on the floor, the people involved with delivering the value. And that's really the opportunity to transform the economy and sort of reduce all the leakage that, in the travel industry. I don't know if you know the aggregators that you buy your hotels or flights through, take 25% off the top, and that's the promise of this new sort of peer-to-peer technology. Kind of spoken to this, but this is the problem when you're trying to start an app business in the centralized world. Most of them fail within 90 days. Here's my centrality example. There's a use case in all those areas of your life, from health, fitness, education, transport, the whole circle. Just in terms of it, just so you know how our business is structured, the infrastructure piece, we started developing on Ethereum, but we very quickly sort of came across some limitations to the technology, and you would have seen last year, when you're trying to build a supercomputer, it doesn't take much load to crash or to grind the system to a halt if all the processing is happening at the network level. So Plug is a internet of blockchains, so it's structured it's layered up much like the internet. So you've got private blockchains and subnets and layering up, and it promises to be easier to integrate, easier to work with, and more scalable than some of the first generation blockchains. Centrality ultimately will be just the tools to build your own applications. So it's this decentralized app store. And then the third piece where we've been quite successful in the last 6 months is Blockhouse, which is our blockchain-based fundraising capability, and we've managed to raise over $200 million US for ourselves and our partners in the last 6 months. So it's a whole different paradigm in terms of fundraising, and what that does, it gives you the space to innovate and to take on the world. And that war chest gives you 5 years runway, which should give you enough space to crack this nut. How we're tracking, this is how the stack layers up. You've got the blockchain layer, and the various platform services which the apps will consume, of which identity wallets and payment wallets are two key ones. And then you can see the application layer at the top. Core services, it's worth just mentioning Causality, which is our kind of machine learning, deep learning, big data engine, and Silo. I'm talking to a few guys about that. Silo is a decentralized communication portal where all of this will come together, for those that want a decentralized communication portal. So just about ready to hand over to Guyan to talk you through Plug and how that will support this new world, especially as it pertains to identity. Yeah, so just while he's getting his mic'd up, one of the key features of Plug is it abstracts away all the complexity of the blockchain. So the feedback from our developers, it's like developing on a normal SQL database. So it makes it a lot more accessible for your everyday developer. And the consensus where the early generation blockchains were proof of work, Plug uses a form of proof of stake, which is much more efficient in terms of energy use, which is another part of the story. And there'll be people. I mean, Guyan will be here to sort of cover any questions that you come up with. But in terms of the general positioning for Plug, it's there's an open source framework element to it, so that will be made available to all developers and the developer community in a few months' time. The target is by September, so we're aiming for that, and then we'll run PlugNet, which will be our public blockchain alongside it, and that will be able to talk to all the first generation blockchains, but also to the more legacy cloud infrastructure and legacy systems. So it enables, a lot of these blockchain projects struggle to come out of production, into production out of testing or proof of concept because they don't integrate with legacy systems. And Plug through its architecture using kernels and proxies is able to talk to these other systems, which enables that transition to happen more gradually, and we think will make it more practical moving forward. So I liken self-sovereign ID to, you've all got your filing cabinet at home or your special drawer where you keep your passport and your utility bills and other things which you need in the digital world when you're registering for new services. Well, this will be just like it'll be just like that, but on your digital device. So it will sit on your mobile phone, encrypted under the protection of your private or your cryptographic key pair, which Guyan can talk more about. And there'll be that proof will have a globally unique address, which is your public key, which will enable you to be recognised. And before anything's shared, it'll be we use a form of aliasing to make the private key experience simpler. But so you'd have to remember your 256 character alphanumeric string, which is not the greatest user experience, and that will enable you to share data attributes depending on the use case. And the hash of your digital proof will reside in the blockchain, encrypted along with your public address. So a lot of terminology there. We'll have questions at the end.